phrases and expressions that are used during small talk. So, what's small talk, I hear you ask? Well, in a nutshell, it's polite conversation about trivial, unimportant, everyday little topics. But small talk really helps your social skills, helps you to connect with other people. Now, knowing how to create small talk is vital in social situations, but it's also very important in professional situations as well. Maybe you want to get to know your colleagues, or you need to build a strong rapport with your customers and your clients. And then there are new people at networking events and conferences. Trust me, small talk is a great icebreaker. And that's exactly what you need. So, I'm going to share some useful questions and phrases that you need to engage in small talk to enable you to keep your English conversations flowing. Not only is small talk a big part of the English language, it's also a big part of British culture generally. It's always good to lead into conversations with a little bit of small talk first before turning to something deep and meaningful. Now, whether you're a native or a non native speaker, the act of small talk can make one a little anxious. You think to yourself, what am I going to say? What can I talk about? How will I finish the conversation and leave without coming across as awkward or, worse still, rude? Yes, small talk can be nerve wracking, but don't worry, we're going to alleviate your fears with the lesson today. What do we need to do first? Well, start the conversation, of course. We need to create the opportunity for small talk. And if you like starting a conversation with, how are you? Well, that's great, but there are other ways to say that. And how about this for another tip? Answering good or fine aren't the only ways to respond to that question. So, let's delve a little deeper, shall we? When someone asks you, how are you? You can say, I've been keeping busy. It's a good answer if you don't want to be too specific. You've been busy with this and that. Then again, you could try saying, not bad, thanks. That's a really common British answer. Next up, we need to respond, keep the conversation flowing. But instead of asking, how are you back, try saying, how's it going with you? This is a pretty informal and relaxed response. They might simply respond with, great, yeah, and the conversation goes from there. Another response you can use might be, what have you been up to lately? With this question, you're asking for a more involved answer, a little more detail, because you genuinely want to know. And if someone asks you this question, all you need to do is listen to the grammar they use, then let your answer reflect it. So you would respond using the present perfect or the present perfect continuous. So if they say, what have you been up to lately? You can say, I've been hard at work training the new staff. Or maybe you don't particularly want to answer this question. You want to guide the conversation somewhere else. You might then say, nothing much, how about you? Or simply, nothing special, you? Now, perhaps you know the person and you want to be more specific. You can ask them something about their life using how is. So you can say, how's the study going? How's the restaurant doing? How's the job going? By doing this, you're showing an interest in them. Now, because you know the person, there's a good chance you know something they've done recently. So you could use how was. How was your trip to Hong Kong? How was the interview? All you have to do is switch out the noun at the end to complete the question. Really easy, right? Another place small talk is really common is in the office. Let's take a look at some useful phrases for English conversation in the workplace. A really great strategy for small talk generally, but especially at work, is to look for common ground. If you can find something in common with your colleagues, then conversation becomes easier. Having a shared interest is great because it gives both parties a great springboard for conversation. Of course, the difficult thing is finding that common ground in the first place, so it's always a good idea to first focus on work when trying to break the ice with your colleagues. I can't believe we've got the order out in time, can you? They might reply by saying, I know, we cut it fine, that's for sure. Cutting it fine is a British phrase that describes when you have a deadline and you only just manage to reach it. You're cutting it fine, aren't you? You need to be at the interview for 3 p.m. and it's 10 to 3 now. So, will they make it or won't they? They're cutting it fine. Another phrase might be, I can't believe how busy we are this week. The reply could be, I know, I've been rushed off my feet. But what if it hasn't been busy? In fact, it's been quite the opposite. You might say, I can't believe how quiet it's been this week. You might get the reply, yes, I know it's been dead, hasn't it? So, dead in this reply means the workplace has almost been without life. No one's been busy, not much to do. And of course, at work, you can always start with a simple question. How's your day been? How's your week been? And if you were asked this, you could say, it's been hell, meaning really bad. Or you might simply reply, it's been great. If you had an extremely busy week, you could say, it's been hectic. Or you've been busy and your week seemed to go very fast, you can reply, it just flew by. Or simply say, so far so good, thanks. Now, just remember, these replies aren't the only ones possible. There are many correct variations, and over time you'll naturally learn many more. So, one thing to remember to carry on small talk if you get a question like, how's your day been? Or, how have you been? Or anything similar, is to remember to follow up with something like, I've been good. How about you? So, tagging on how about you keeps the small talk flowing nicely, so the conversation can go back and forth. If you work at a bigger company, you might find yourself at the coffee machine at break time, and there's a colleague there that you don't know. You've never met them before. What could you say? Well, humor can sometimes be a good icebreaker. The coffee is not up to much, but it's wet. That can sometimes spark a good interaction. On a simpler level, you might say, Hi, have you worked here long? I haven't seen you around before. If they say they're new to the place, you could say, Oh, really? Where were you before this? Or maybe you have seen them before. Well, then you could say, What are you working on at the moment? Anything interesting? Now, for the British, there's one thing that never fails to help strike up a conversation, and that's perhaps the most popular of small talk topics, the weather. We Brits love talking about the weather. Maybe that's because it's so changeable in Britain, and fast changing at that. A comment about the weather is almost certain to get the small talk ball rolling. You could begin by saying, Wow, it's a gorgeous day, isn't it? Can you believe how strong that wind is today? And it doesn't just have to be the current weather. You might look up at the darkened sky and say, It looks like rain. What do you think? You might be right, comes the answer. I've just looked at the forecast. They say there's a heavy rain this weekend. Do you have anything planned? Yes, a picnic. It looks like that might be off if that's the case. So there you go. You can use the weather to ease into other subjects. Oh, a picnic? Whereabouts? The grounds of Newstead Abbey. Oh, Lord Byron's home? I do love his poetry, don't you? And the small talk continues. And what about online meetings? They've become more popular lately for obvious reasons. So, how do we approach a call with someone we're not familiar with? Of course, we can use all the simple questions we've already mentioned, including, How are you today? If we're on the phone, we can also adapt it by saying, How are things there today? Or you could get a bit more specific and say, I've heard it's been a scorcher where you are today. A scorcher means an extremely hot day. Or maybe you have no knowledge of the weather there. Perhaps they're in a different country altogether. How's the weather where you are? That's always a good one. Or you could even add a little comment like, I've heard there's a storm where you are, is that right? I think you get the idea. Another great avenue for small talk is leisure time and hobbies. Most people have free time on the weekends, so you can start by asking about the weekend. What have you got planned for the weekend? Anything? I could say weekend, meaning the nearest future weekend, the one coming up. Or you could ask about the one that's just finished with. Did you do anything good over the weekend? I did. I played badminton with Colin. To ask about someone's interests or their hobbies, you could say, so, what have you done in your spare time lately? Anything good? The answer might be something you have experience of, like, oh, I went boating on the Serpentine. You might then answer, did you? I went there with Lisa last month. Now, what can you say about a hobby you've never tried or have no knowledge of? I went skydiving for the first time. Oh, I can't stand heights. Weren't you nervous? You reply, and the conversation can go on. Let's have an example of a hobby you have knowledge of. Did you do anything fun last weekend? I went on a bike ride in London, Battersea Park to Greenwich. Oh, I've done that. It's a great route for sightseeing, isn't it? Now, you could also just simply use a question in the present perfect tense. So start with have you, and then tack on an activity, any activity. Have you been down the pub lately? So, have you tried that new restaurant on Portobello Road? Have you worked out at the new gym on the high road yet? Okay, there we have it. A wealth of great phrases and expressions that are used in small talk conversations in English. Let me just say again, there are a great many ways to initiate small talk, and the examples in this lesson are just the tip of a very big iceberg. But they're sure to get you started. So, what's the best way to practice and remember them? Well, you can, of course, re-watch this lesson and pause the video at any point in order to absorb the information. You can practice thinking about the phrases you're going to use and then rehearse them out loud, speaking to yourself in the mirror or wherever else you want to practice. And then take every opportunity after that to start stepping out of your comfort zone and practicing in actual conversations wherever you are in life. In an online class, in your local corner shop, maybe with your colleagues at work, in the elevator, wherever you get to bump into someone, practice these little useful phrases. And I promise you, with time, it will become easier and you'll start to really enjoy it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.